Hi guys, my name's Bex, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm bringing to you my July wrap-up. So guys, we are moving into the month of August, which means it's time to tell you guys what I read in the month of July. Now, July was an okay reading month. I would say that it wasn't the best quality-wise and not the best quantity-wise, but like, it was okay. Still, we got some books knocked off the TBR, and I'm excited to share them with you guys today. So without further ado, let's jump in, starting with the stats for July. So in the month of July, I ended up reading 6 books in total, totaling a page count of 1,821 pages. And the genres I read were 3 historical, 1 fantasy, 1 mystery, and 1 sci-fi. And in terms of the audience for these books, which is the new stat I am adding, I read 1 adult book, 1 middle grade book, and 4 YA books. Now moving on to ratings, I read 2 3-star books, 1 3.5-star book, 1 4-star book, 1 4.5-star book, and 1 5-star book. Now in terms of format, I read 1 ebook, 1 audiobook, 1 graphic novel, and 3 physical books. Now that the stats are all over and done with, let's dive into the book, starting with my worst book and moving all the way up to my favorite read of the month. Let's get into it. First of all, I have to share the worst book I read this month, and that was The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White. This is a retelling of Frankenstein. Elizabeth comes from poverty, and basically she is so close to the streets. She is hungry, she's bruised from her caregiver, and then she stumbles across the Frankensteins, and they take her in to be a friend for Victor Frankenstein. Victor has absolutely anything he could ask for, but the only thing he doesn't have is a friend, because he's basically a little bit psychotic, and Elizabeth is his friend, and she knows that she has to keep Victor happy to stay well and to be safe and to be fed. That's what she does. She becomes everything that Victor needs, and it's basically her job to keep him calm and not having any outbursts, and it is interesting. Going into this book, I first off adore the writing. I think the writing style is very lovely, and it was very dark, which really suited the tone of this novel. But there were a few things that were like a touch amiss. I think ultimately this book was kind of a little bit all over the place. I expected going into it to be a lot about Victor and Elizabeth and their relationship. There were a lot more twists and turns in this that I feel like detracted from the story. There was a lot more additional information that I think was unnecessary. I cannot tell you what it is because it spoils like the whole plot of the book, but I feel like this one could have just been toned back a little bit and really focused on the relationship. And I think what another point that really detracted from the story is that it is an under 300 page book, but it just felt really long. It really dragged. The pacing was a little bit off. The story just didn't grip me. It didn't hold my attention, and I just kind of wanted to finish it in the long run. 3 stars for The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. Not the worst book I've ever read, but it was just a little bit eh. Moving on to my next 3-star read. It is truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This is like a mystery about a old school, and this school is very prestigious. It's free tuition, and basically the best of the best, the smartest and brightest kids go here. And this private school was owned by the Illinghams, but in 1936, Illingham, who owned its daughter and wife, were kidnapped. This story does take place in 2 different kind of time frames. We go back to 1936 and to the present day, where a girl named Stevie goes to this school and she wants to solve the crime and solve what happened to Illingham's family. So she goes there, and then Truly Devious turns up again. It's an interesting novel. I really enjoyed reading it, but there were a few things were a little bit amiss. Now, the main downfall for this book was the ending. Don't get me wrong, I really liked the story. I was so invested in this story and I really liked reading it, and then the ending happened and I was left going, what? It was just such an underwhelming end to the story, and what really annoyed me about the ending is that I always think any book in a series should always be able to end and stand up on its own. This book does not stand up without its follow-on books. The ending was just so underwhelming and so disappointing because it just stopped. We were there, we were in the story, I felt like we were really getting to the climax, and then it stopped. And I could make an inappropriate joke at this point, but I won't. This book was disappointing because it was everything I wanted in the mystery. I really liked it. I was really intrigued, and I was excited to see where it went, and then it just ended. And then they're like, pick up the next book to see what happens. Well, now I don't want to because I'm that disappointed with this ending. Felt like that was a really, like a really raging review. I didn't really tell you anything about it other than I hated the ending. But moving on to my 3.5 star read of the month, it was The Mermaid by Christina Henry. Basically, the story is about a mermaid who always wanted to see the land, and she was just really, really intrigued. One day she sees a sailor who looks really sad. She's hooked in his net and he lets her go. And she kind of wants to get out of the water and see what it's like to walk and be human, and she does that, and it goes from there. It's about her life living and loving, and it's about grief, but then it becomes a little bit more, and surprise, surprise, P.T. Barnum's in it. And I feel like this story is like two halves. There's the first half, which is beautiful and lyrical and is telling her story about leave her family underwater, I guess, and then take on a different route where her life was all about this one man, and then her wanting to explore more past that. So it's kind of broken up in two parts. The first part was so atmospheric and beautiful, and I really, really enjoyed the story, and I really, really loved reading it. Second half, we took a little bit of a dive, but it wasn't bad in any sense. It was just not as good as the first. The first part really keeps you hooked, and I think that's a credit to Christina Henry's writing. Their writing really sucks you in. Same is said when I read Alice. I guess this book for me felt really like it could have been separated into two different stories. The second part, I think, lacked a little bit of depth in some ways. I think the main character was complex, but I think the side characters were underdone, especially the character of P.T. Barnum. He is supposed to be, I guess, your villain in some ways, and I think he lacked layers. He was such a predictable villain, and he was just a businessman wanting to make money. There was nothing more to him from that, and that's kind of what disappointed me. I felt like the end part and the story about P.T. Barnum and the mermaid could have been more, and it wasn't. It fell short, and I think the character of P.T. Barnum could have played a bigger role and could have made this more of an exciting journey in the end. Moving on to my 4-star read of the month, it was The Woods, Volume 3, New London by James Tiernan IV. I really, really like The Woods, so I gave this one a 4 stars, and I think this series is just really cool. It's a sci-fi. It's basically about a school in Milwaukee which gets transported out of nowhere to like a different maybe time and space, I guess, and they've got their own challenges, and this one was a little bit interesting. I love how they weave together, and they're kind of in a different dimension and trying to work out why they're there. It's very strange. I can't really explain it, but I really, really like it. I think it's got dark tones. I think the artwork is really growing on me. I love the color palette. I don't know. I'm just really fascinated with the story, and I can't wait to see where it goes. I have the next one, and I cannot wait to dive in. What piques my interest is I don't know where it's going, and we shall see. Moving on to my 4.5 star read of the month, and this is my audiobook of the month, which is The Mark of Athena by Rick Riordan. This is the third book in the Heroes of Olympus series, and it's a series that I am loving. I cannot obviously tell you too much about this one because it's a follow-on book, but the Heroes of Olympus series basically follows a guy named Jason who wakes up on a bus holding a girl's hand, and he doesn't know how he got there, and he knows absolutely nothing about himself. And then monsters start attacking, and he gets taken away to Camp Half-Blood. And it is such a fun story. I love Rick's writing. I love that it's on the younger side, but I think it keeps the stakes keep getting higher and higher, and I just love seeing the characters. I love their dynamic. I love their interactions, and I love the audiobook as well. There's so many things about this story I love, and what always gets me to knock the Rick Riordan books a little bit down is that they are quite predictable. The story is very consistent. It's the same shit every time, but I love it either way. And this series I probably love more than the Percy Jackson series, even though don't get me wrong, I love the Percy Jackson series, but I think I like this one more. I really enjoyed this, and if you're looking for a fun middle grade, I definitely recommend any of Rick Riordan's books because they are just really, really cool and really, really interesting, and I think they have a lot of depth in them as well. It's not just a cute adventure story. There's a lot more into it. It's about friendship, and it's diverse, and I really, really enjoy this. I think Rick writes so well, and I cannot wait to see how this whole series kind of sums up, because I will be reading the next book, which is The House of Hades, in August for my notes. If you have not seen my notes TBR, it will be linked up above so you can go check it out. But hopefully I love it. And my 5-star read of the month is going to be a weird one to talk to you about because it's actually a novella, it's a short story, and it is Becoming the Dark Prince by Kerri Maniscalco. And this is the kind of novella following Escaping from Houdini by Kerri Maniscalco in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series, and this follows perspectives of Thomas Cresswell, which is one of my favorite male lead characters recently. I adore him, and I think he's a great love interest in this story. And basically this follows him during and after Escaping from Houdini. And this story, what's great about it is it gives a little bit of an insight into Thomas Cresswell that we haven't got before. Like we see Thomas Cresswell and we fell in love with Thomas Cresswell, but we've never got an insight into his mind and his inner workings, which is what this gave us, which I absolutely loved. It was a really good like snippet to get everyone excited from Capturing the Devil, which comes out later this year, and I cannot get enough of this story. I think Thomas's character is complex, and I think he is detailed, and I love the way Kerri has crafted this character, but as well as in a time in the 1880s where men were really kind of controlled women. That was their role. Women were just supposed to be housewives and they do what the man says. I love that him and Audrey Rose push the boundaries of that, and I love that he pushes the boundaries of that. And I just cannot get enough of this series. It was just enough to get me not only excited for Capturing the Devil, but that little bit more that we needed of Thomas Cresswell. So yeah, writing's great. I actually physically read this one, which is weird because I normally only ever listen to the Stalking Jack the Ripper series on audiobook. And I physically read this and the writing was great and I couldn't find a fault. So it got 5 stars. But that is it for me today, guys. That is my July wrap-up, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, of course, like this wrap-up, go on and give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to see more and have not already, and chat to me down in the comments. Let me know what you read in the month of July. I would love to hear. Let me know if you're participating in the Newts. I would also love to talk about that as well. That is it for me today, guys. I make videos every Monday and Thursday, and I'll see you in a new one. Bye!